Hello everyone. Today is 16th of February. Now it's about 1 o'clock, middle of the day by Moscow and Vladikavkaz time. And as you can see, dear friends, this update is going to be in walk and talk style. And this is Vladikavkaz, capital of North Ossetia, Alania. I am now on the right bank of the Terek River. I hope you can see at least a little bit there, the river. And yes, there is quite a number of news about some important developments, and I will share in this update those news that I picked. And at the same time, I hope you will find interesting and nice background, because Vladikavkaz is a really very cute, nice city. And as I promised, dear friends, to make Alex Christopher style video on the streets of the city, I'm doing it. So yes, that's been said. Today is of course Sunday, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And so let's start. Let me turn the camera. There is one of the main squares in the city. Some administrative buildings there, and it's a very green city. One may say not necessarily in the winter, but there's plenty of squares, alleys, boulevards where people, locals and guests of the capital of North Ossetia, Alania, Autonomous Republic of the Russian Federation, can spend some time, go for a little walk, chill. Wonderful city, by the way. I love Vladikavkaz. And yes, that's been said. Let's go through some news now. And before I start, let me ask you to click that like button and leave some commentary. It might help to deal with the algorithm, especially nowadays when it seems like after Trump being elected in US, excuse me, after he was inaugurated, actually, YouTube's algorithm become even more crazier. So my channel is in some extra strict shadow ban. But anyways, let's go through some news. And first of all, I'll give you information about a phone conversation that took place yesterday between heads of Foreign Ministry of Russian Federation and State Department of US, Lavrov and Rubio. Topics of conversation were obviously Ukrainian crisis, Middle East, some other. Although a main topic of discussion was preparation of upcoming meeting that will take place between delegations of the two countries in Saudi Arabia. This will happen next week. And also, I believe, two high-ranking officials exchange opinions on state of preparations for a meeting of the leaders of the two countries, President Trump and President Putin. And according to media reports, this meeting of two presidents might happen also this month, before end of February. And you guessed who is not invited on that meeting. That will be obviously about Ukrainian crisis. Ukraine is not invited. Terrorist regime there. And the EU, by the way, is also out of conversation. It seems like Washington and Moscow definitely don't need some third irrelevant parties to be present on any talks between delegations of the two countries that will happen next week, or definitely not while presidents of two countries will have a conversation, and there might even reach some agreements. So next couple of weeks are going to be very interesting, and they're most likely even historic. So yes, as I already said, Bloomberg initially reported that preparations are underway to organize meeting of the presidents of US and Russia in Saudi Arabia before end of this month. Also, by the way, Kat Kellogg, official representative of a US president, formally into Ukraine and Russia, but now I don't really understand what is his status, because seems like negotiations are led from US side by some other people, and Kellogg have been sidelined. But yesterday he was presented in this so-called security conference that took place in Munich, some gathering of some bunch of idiots, really, with maybe very few exceptions. And idiots and psychopaths, with few exceptions. And by the way, I want to show you this some stand here with some pictures from different parts of North Ossetia, Alania. Popular places among locals and tourists. And of course, this is Northern Caucasus, and so mountains are everywhere, understandably so. You know, nice little touch on this street, which is Prospect Mira, or Prospect of Peace, or Boulevard of Peace. Although Mir you can translate also as a world. So yes, to continue, dear friends, Kat Kellogg had the opportunity to make some statements during his presence, his work on sidelines of Munich Security Conference, and he actually managed to make some headlines once again. And for example, he said that he was asked if EU will be part of upcoming negotiations between US and Russia, while Ukrainian crisis will be discussed, and he said straight away, directly, that no, EU is not invited, right? Which is quite interesting. I shared video of that on my Twitter X and Telegram channels, pages. But he went even further, and for whatever reason, by the way, he started again making some threats towards Russia. And so he once again started talking about sanctions, that there is a huge opportunity to impose some additional sanctions on Russia and pressure Russia to do this and to do that. He also said that Russia will be forced to, or might be forced to agree on some concessions of territories that already been liberated by Russian forces. He went as far as to say that Russia will be forced or might be forced to neglect its relationships with Iran, North Korea, China, some other countries that stand next to Russia while during these difficult times. And so, yes, some wild statements from Kellogg. But at this point, I guess we all understand that he is a sort of distraction, right? This person probably was picked by Trump and his inner circle as a sort of distraction, so he will just go around and make some noise, and while he is in Europe, he will say something like, we're going to force Russia to do this and to do that, so that European so-called elites will have no heart attacks earlier than they should, earlier than it is convenience for US at least. And that's exactly what he does. He does, man. He makes some noise, some headlines with these crazy statements. But if initially I was reacting quite strongly on these nonsensical phrases from Kellogg or some other people from Trump's administration that clearly seems like are designated as a distraction, now I'm kind of cool with it, because it seems like true decision makers are very different people, and it don't really matter what Kellogg says. Obviously, Russia not gonna turn its back on its partner states. It's just not happening. It's not even a part of discussion, by the way. And obviously, US have no leverage to do anything, really. Of course, if Trump's administration has no desire to destroy, to obliterate the entire US, because in that case, yes, US can escalate further and even provoke Third World War, which will be end of US, end of entire world. But I don't think Trump wants that, or anybody whose opinion really matters in Washington right now. And so, yes, Kellogg is a quite interesting actor, isn't it? With some stranger worldviews. But anyways, when it comes to negotiations, of course, it is interesting what kind of positions sides will have, and I think negotiation is not going to be easy, because the Russian delegation will have some strong demands from US, because one should keep in mind, dear friends, that due to US direct involvement in this proxy war against Russia, tens of thousands of Russian citizens were killed, and this cannot be forgotten or forgiven. I did not see anybody spoke on this topic until for now in the Western media. For whatever reason, they assume that Russia is in a weak position, and US can, or West can, pressure it to do anything. But this is definitely not the case. Russia is winning. It's objective, it's factual, and therefore, if US, which is weakened significantly, and West, which is weakened significantly, really wants the escalation to happen, so that Western ruling class will have more time and the opportunity to focus on some other areas where there might also have significant challenges in upcoming years, they have to accept significant concessions. They will just have to. This street, by the way, this boulevard, is for pedestrians mainly, although some emergency services cars are allowed to move around, police and the trams. But you know what? Let me turn the camera so I give you some 360 view. Weather is quite nice, sunny. Although it is winter, so even though we are in south of Russia right now, it's still little bit cold, but nothing extraordinary, and so yes, West should be ready. Western ruling class should be ready for some serious concessions. I think US, some other NATO member states will pay tens of billions of dollars as a compensation to Russia. One way or another, this might not be disclosed information, but I'm quite sure Russia will demand these NATO countries that were directly involved in hostilities against Russia to pay compensations so that families of killed Russian soldiers, officers, and also families of civilians that were killed by Nazi terrorist regime of Zelensky with their weapons that they received from NATO, so that those families will receive additional support. Of course, government, Russian government, state stands next to them and provides whatever support is necessary, but additional support would not harm, isn't it? So I'm quite sure one of the topics of discussion will be compensations that NATO member states will pay to Russia. 100%, by the way. This will be the conversation, in the conversation. Also, by the way, obviously Moscow will demand that at least outside of Western Ukraine, there will be no presence of the Western world in any shape or form, in any ways, right? So West will acknowledge that territories outside of Western Ukraine is a zone of Russian influence, and they stay away from it, 100%, right? This is going to be topic of negotiations, obviously, if any achievement will be reached by the sides. Also, I believe Russia will demand US and then collective West and subsequently rest of the world to recognize Russian jurisdiction over their new regions. This has to happen. And also, as a part of resolution of their crisis, obviously Kiev regime has to be demilitarized, denazified, no questions about that. And the referendums have to take place in all the regions that formally still in control of Kiev, so that people will have opportunity to vote, to decide their future and have a say. Do they want to be a part of this artificial quasi-state entity on the name of Ukraine, or maybe they want her to go fully independent, or maybe they want to join Russia. So referendums should be conducted, and I think as a part of resolution of the crisis, this topic will be also discussed, and many other issues, by the way. But one should keep in mind that it's Russia that will have demands, not US, not the West, because they are in no position to dictate any terms. They are not in position to say anything at all. They will either agree or disagree. If they will disagree on Russian terms, okay, Russia will continue, move forward, and will achieve all of its goals anyways, right? But it will cost collective Western ruling class even more severely in all possible ways, including in terms of influence that Western ruling class might still have in this world, which is shrinking, by the way, shrinking and shrinking constantly, especially in the last 3 years, when the entire world has realized that Western ruling class is actually paper tiger. You know, they were bullying the entire world for decades and decades, for centuries actually. If we are talking about these so-called elites in the West, and now the entire world is seeing that, I mean, these are paper tiger, man. What they were afraid of. And Russia clearly demonstrated that, well, they can be dealt, you know. So yes, that's been said, dear friends. Let's go through some more news. Anyways, we will find out in a couple of days' time what topics exactly will be discussed, or at least some of them, some of the topics that will be discussed during these negotiations in Saudi Arabia. What are the news I have, by the way? Well, Peter Szijjártó, legendary foreign minister of Hungary, stated that European pro-war elites seek to derail Ukraine peace. And I have to agree with Peter Szijjártó. I myself said in many occasions that a risk that these European so-called elites or part of Western ruling class that is prioritizing Europe over US is losing now, and out of desperation is capable of anything, and they may actually try and derail talks between Moscow and Washington. They may authorize some large-scale terrorist attacks, false flag operations. Risks are endless when we are talking about these psychopaths. So therefore, obviously, I guess Russian and, in this particular case, US leadership and intelligence services probably are focused on such possible risks. And I would not be surprised if we will even find out sometime in the future that security services of two countries were actually exchanging information on possible threats that is coming now from Europe, from the European so-called elites, right? So yes, Peter Szijjártó definitely has point, but hopefully these psychopaths that are in charge of EU and number of EU member states will fail, and peace will prevail. Also, by the way, some interesting statements were made during Munich Security Conference by Foreign Minister of Poland, which stated that, well, one way or another, but European troops will have to get engaged in Ukrainian crisis and be deployed basically on the ground. This was stated by Sikorsky, and well, if he meant Western Ukraine, okay. I said many times that most likely once this conflict will end, Western Ukraine will become under control of NATO, rest of the Ukraine in a Russian zone of influence. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Hello.
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 And so yes, if he meant that European states would have to deploy their troops into Western Ukraine, including Poland itself. Yes, that might happen, but the rest of the territory is definitely out of question. Russia will never, ever allow that to happen. And also, by the way, Macron seems like panicking big time, and he is calling some emergency summit of EU leaders, which it's supposed to take place tomorrow, and they're gonna discuss how their responses or European responses to latest developments when it comes to Russia-US dialogue. And so, I wonder what kind of outcome we will have after this summit of EU leaders. I mean, they are paper tigers, by the way, EU, European states. I mean, as many experts rightfully are saying, these are quasi-states, really, client states of US, and they're not really capable of much. And it is just too late now to start act as if they are some sort of sovereign states and are independent powers on our geopolitical map. They are not. So therefore, all this acting that we are observing in Europe, all of it is just, I don't know, it's laughable, isn't it? It does tells us that, yes, European elites are panicking, they are hysterical, and they don't really know what to do. That's what it is, man. They just have no idea what to do. And they don't want to acknowledge that they are not rulers of this world as they were presenting themselves, They are just, loosely relevant, some groups somewhere on the outskirts of Eurasian continent. That's what it is, And as a new defense secretary of US said just a couple of days ago, realism has to settle in this Western, in collective West, right? It is necessary. Those people to face reality. And it's gonna be very painful for them, man, very painful. I don't think they are ready for this. But anyways, there will be some clown show, I guess, organized by French President Macron. I'm not even sure that many EU leaders or leaders of the EU member states will attend that summit. But, we will see. Also, by the way, former Russian president and current deputy chairman Dmitry Medvedev praised J.D. Vance and his speech during his participation in Munich Security Conference. And well, as I already said in previous updates, by the way, very many people were impressed big time by that speech, right? Because I will say after 2007, as I already spoke about it earlier, after 2007 Putin speech in Munich Security Conference, this speech probably is the second most memorable one. That's how it's gonna stay in history, I guess, for this period of time, because it was something, man. J.D. Vance went in and said everything, basically, straight to the faces of these cowards that formally represent European states, while in reality, all they represent is some psycho, this neolib, globalist bunch of criminals, right? They don't represent no people of Europe, or never did, right? So it was good to see, by the way, that someone from within of collective West is actually saying as it is, you know. So yes, Medvedev was, I guess, also impressed as many others, and he applauded J.D. Vance and said that he's a, you know, he's a brave man, because he went into, let's say, heart of Europe, although many people will argue that Munich is not heart of Europe or city of any importance. It's outside of Germany, but anyways, Vance went in and said straight as it is, shocked everyone. And well, great, well done. What can I say, man? Of course, US also can be criticized for very many things that J.D. Vance criticized EU states. But I mean, he was open about flaws in US also, so he was self-critical too. He did not say that, you know, in US everything is fine. No, there is some issues, and it is a significant topic because in Europe and in US, by the way, it's almost prohibited now to openly support or openly defend the rights of Palestinians, for example. Am I correct? In some places, it's almost even banned by law, and people being phrased as some sort of anti-Semites and racists and that kind of crap, just because they were demanding rights, basic human rights of Palestinians to be secured. That's how bad situation when it comes to freedom of speech and freedom of expression is in Europe and in US itself also. But anyways, at least Vance acknowledged that situation in US is also not ideal, and let's see if they will work to improve that. And dear friends, few more news. TASS news agency is reporting that Russian forces liberated Berezovka settlement in DPR. Defense Ministry confirmed this information. Every day, by the way, we are receiving news about more and more settlements being liberated. Also, yesterday, as it was expected, another round of exchange of hostages took place between Israel and Palestine. Among released hostages by Hamas, there was a Russian citizen, also dual citizen of Russia and Israel. And the office of Netanyahu stated that Hamas is in captivity in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip, in hands of Hamas. There is still 73 hostages. I did not see any comment on that from Hamas side. Is it a correct number or not? Hard to tell, but at least that's what Israeli side is saying, that 73 more hostages are in hands of Hamas, and despite threats of Trump, all the hostages to be released, and despite threats of similar threats of Netanyahu, yesterday Hamas released just 3 hostages, and in exchange Israel also released a significant number of Palestinian hostages that were kept in Israeli jails. Also, by the way, there was elections, presidential elections in Abkhazia, which is a breakaway region of Georgia, in southern Caucasus region, and recognized as an independent state by Russia and a few more countries in this world. Presidential elections were conducted in a peaceful environment, although none of the candidates managed to gain majority of the votes. So therefore, in several weeks' time, second tour of elections will take place. Kallas, by the way, Kaja Kallas, head of EU diplomacy and extreme Russophobe, stated that I don't even know if we should pay any attention to anything that Kai Kallas says nowadays or ever. But you know, I marked this news, and I will give you, I will share it so that you will also have a better understanding what kind of people, with what kind of people we are dealing when it comes to Western ruling so-called elites. And she said, you know what? She said that no Russian civilians are harmed or have been harmed by Kiev regime. Can you imagine, dear friends? That's what she said, that no Russian civilians were killed or wounded as a result of activity of Kiev regime. And this is despite there many hundreds of documented cases of war crimes committed by Kiev regime forces and their NATO mercenaries. In Kursk salient area alone, nothing to be said about other regions that were targeted by these terrorists that temporarily hold into power in Kiev. So that's the colors, by the way. That's ahead of EU diplomacy. Can they degenerate any further than that? I don't know. I don't know. And I guess this is it for now. I did mark a few more news. For example, one of the leaders of IFG in Germany, Alternative for Germany party, Alice Weidel, who is also candidate to become chancellor from this party, stated that IFG is all for restarting relationships with Russia, for closer relationships with Russia, and for sanction wars to end, and Germany-Russian relationships to be rebuilt as much as possible. Well, interesting statements, especially if we take into account that more and more politicians and public figures in Europe that have a huge support of public quite often now are expressing somewhat similar opinions, because they all are realizing that we are not enemies. We should not see each other as enemies and should not treat each other as enemies. I was constantly repeating this, you know, time after time after time, because it's just so obvious, isn't it? We are not enemies, though. And it is good that public figures, politicians in the West, in Western states, more and more often are saying exactly the same, which is good stuff, and hopefully sometime in the future will allow our countries to actually build some good working, if not friendly necessarily, but at least good working relationships, right? And or who knows, maybe even friendly, by the way. As I said, we are not enemies, and this whole confrontation should never ever occur. But tell this to those psychopaths that are still in charge of collective West. And dear friends, also articles are popping up now in the media in the West, in Russia also, that are basically summarizing this Munich Security Conference. And the overall line in these articles is that Munich Conference may signify end to transatlantic relations or strategical partnership, and well, this might be the case. This might be the case because it seems like part of Western ruling class that is prioritizing US is actually sick and tired of European elites, right? And they want this separation to happen so that US will be focused, US as a main enforcer of the Western world will be more focused on itself to be able to maintain relevance on the geopolitical map. And so, yes, they might have a point, all these articles. Maybe we are witnessing final drift of US and Europe from each other. It is clearly a possibility. And dear friends, I will end this update now. Hopefully you will find it informative, interesting, and useful. I hope you will find interesting this background of one of the central parts of Vladikavkaz. Please click that like button, leave some commentary, share video with your friends, or at least share information about my channels with your friends. And if you like my work and want to support, you can do it. All the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Have a wonderful day and take care.